Ecdysis, Seeds and Cuttings. On the day she boards the Yangli Way, they call her Nazia Sawar. She carries in her knapsack an unopened letter from her brother, her mother's ashes, a selection of seeds and cuttings from her favourite neighbourhood trees and plants, and some 30,000 songs and short videos on a hand-me-down My Electric augment. On the ship's manifest, Nazia Sawar is one of 24 classless scopers, trash collectors and composters, and caretakers devoted to endlessly tidying the many surfaces and people within the Yangli Way that cannot or do not clean themselves. She hopes, through hard work and perseverance, she will prove herself worthy of one of the ship's remaining civilian cryopods. Or, even better, a promotion to an auteur position where she believes she'll find the freedom to devote her waking hours entirely to the loving care of the ship's hydroponics facilities. Nazia is quadrilingual. Several of her fellow scopers are not. Born monolinguals who got lucky in international Exodus lotteries, just like she did. When they realise that she can speak to some of them, they do their best to befriend her. They share meals. They show her photos of the loved ones they left behind. They explain the function of the ship's many impossible machines. In turn, she does her best to teach them how to speak to the others. In this way, they are all a little less alone. She is 27 years old. On the day she awakens in the distributary, she names herself Nasan R. She carries in her hands a small silver jar. A dent has crushed its lid. It is impossible to open. She does not know its provenance, but she feels an inexplicable tugging of grief in her chest when she thinks about walking on without it. She makes herself a home under the largest tree she can find. In the early days, it is little more than a lean-to and a campfire, but she shares it willingly with whoever passes by. Her guests help her transform the lean-to into a proper cottage with several guest beds. One cottage becomes 2, then 2 is 3, until 3 becomes a village. Nasan loves her guests and friends. She loves her little ramshackle community. But she never wished to become mother or mayor. Whenever they gather in the evening for dinner, she feels claustrophobic anxiety pressed tight around her. She is shackled to the earth by all these people that she loves, and she has no words to explain her own restlessness. She feels monstrous. Why doesn't she love this? Why doesn't she want to stay? One clear night, amid the honey-heavy smell of spring flowers and recent rain, she takes her silver jar and goes out into the dripping dark. She wanders. She tries on lives like she is trying on city-tailored fashions. For a few weeks, she is a corsair. Then for a whole summer, she is a field hand. When she tires of that, she balances books for an atom merchant who trades in radioactive materials. Nothing holds her. Seeing her silver jar, one man suggests she may be a treasure hunter. The idea sends her deep into a subterranean cavern where she finds no treasure, but instead bioluminescent worms and a paladin who calls herself Sir Ido. "If you're looking for a job," Sir says, "I should introduce you to my boss." On the day Nasan finds her calling, the DSM styles her a translator. It confuses her, because the speech is the speech. Variations have developed over time, but none are so distant from each other that 2 awoken from around the world cannot speak to each other. "What do you mean?" Nasan asks. "Well," the DSM says, "I've been watching since you arrived. People look to you when they're fighting, and you try to understand each side before you try to help. When you speak, you do it deftly, without condescension." She considers Nasan. "It seems to me that you lend people grace when you help them explain themselves. A little candle of pride flickers in Nassan's throat. That's just mediation, she says, glancing away. Don't sell yourself short. Anyone can break up a fight. Few people can so clearly grasp the spirit of a thought, then rephrase it so that deaf ears hear it. Gifts like that can end wars. Thinking on that, the diasome sobers. We'll have to keep your talent to ourselves, for now. The sanguine would just as soon cut out your tongue. The Theodicy War is a fact of life, until it isn't. The killing stops, but the wounds remain. Nassan helps the Awoken mend. Her friends urge her to speak publicly, to help people on a grander scale. But Nassan believes the most effective change happens in groups of fewer than 10. Ecdysis. Chords of Meaning. She is standing in a crowd of thousands when Mara Sov tells the Awoken about the dying world they abandoned. The idea sucker punches her. One crippling jab to every tender part of her. For 4 sleepless nights, she can scarcely draw a breath without gulping. She holds her silver jar to her forehead, focusing on its cool, constant weight, and knows that she must leave. She finds her old friend Sio. Amid the feverish departure preparations, there is somehow time for an introduction to Mara. Nassan makes a pledge of herself and her skills. She will do what she can to convince those who might stay behind. No, Mara interrupts with a bite of unsweetened tea. I would not ask that of you or anyone else. Nassan hesitates. Help those who have already made their choice, whatever it is. Help them with the grief. She clasps Nassan's hand. The stress around her eyes eases. That's more important. The Exodus is absolute in its terror. Nassan has never felt such a profound sense of schism. Not when leaving lovers, nor communities, nor cherished hiding places. As the distributary shrinks behind their hulls, she looks down at the little silver jar in her hands and wonders who she left behind in the world they're returning to protect. She wonders if they might still be alive. Xior is as plain and ready a companion as she ever was in the Diasome's camp, but Mara is an enigma. Nassan feels drawn to her, not by her porcelain beauty, but by her onion skin layers of defense. There are so many different truths that ring through Mara's carefully chosen words, chords of nuanced meaning that she feels she might be able to separate out into cleaner notes for frightened minds craving simplicity. She does what she can. In quiet hours and fragmented conversations, she becomes an unconventional counselor to the would-be queen. When the first fragile attempts at rebuilding society run afoul of the long, unquiet night, then the discovery of the Traveller and the Fallen, and then inevitably turn to riot and desertion, Nassan goes to Mara again to pledge her services. Let me go after them, she begs, not a day after the proclamation that they all hear in their skulls instead of their ears. I don't mean to change their minds or convince them to come back, I just... Then what do you mean to do? Xior asks curiously. Mara watches her with ageless patience, waiting for her to find the words. Nassan purses her lips. I want them to understand that you are... that you are good. That you aren't what they think. Seeing Xior bristle, she holds up her hand. To her relief, Mara makes a slight warning gesture as well. And if they know that, and still wish to live apart from us on Earth, that's fine. That's their choice. I don't need them to understand that. Mara says softly. There is the faintest husk of grief in her steady voice. No, Nassan agrees, relieved that Mara is willing to consider this truth. You don't. You have the courage to be disliked, and that is uncommon. But it is just as important, sometimes, to cultivate goodwill. Especially if you've forgotten what it feels like to not know everything, she thinks. Mara looks away. Nassan watches closely and thinks that perhaps she has been heard. Sior shifts her weight impatiently, tired by all this meaningful silence. It has been a long 19 hours. If you go, Mara says finally, you cannot come back. Nassan hears the truth in it. She reaches to clasp Mara's hand. Of course. So she goes to Earth. She carries a survival kit, a hunting rifle, and the tarnished silver jar that has followed her through her whole existence. She finds no Awoken as she wanders an empty prairie. She spreads no gospel. It is not 2 weeks before a band of Risen, wild with fear of themselves, each other, and the unknown, ambush her lonely campsite and kill her in her sleep. Risen. On the day her ghost resurrects her, she asks him for a name, and he calls her Orin. He asks her for a name, and she calls him Gol. Marrow deep instinct drives that decision. She could not declare its etymology if someone held a knife to her throat. Gol explains that there is a settlement a few days' walk to the east, that there is no road, and that the wilderness is regularly patrolled by roving aliens who will try to kill them both. As he speaks, Orin looks around. They are surrounded by a young forest, vivacious with birds and clouds of gnats. It is impossible to imagine that a deadly alien might be lurking somewhere nearby. But Gol found her. Gol knows more about the world than she does. She trusts him. She scavenges the leaf litter until she finds a fallen tree limb. Will this help? She asks him, testing its heft. He twists his wings, puzzled. Against the aliens? She elaborates. Oh. Courteous, he pretends to consider it. Then... no. Probably not. They have guns. I see, she says, though she doesn't. She breaks off the smaller branches, using her foot for leverage. Soon, she has a crude mace. It is heavy, slow, and does not break when she tests it against a tree trunk. She doesn't know what the aliens look like. She does not know what guns are. She does trust Gol. But she can't help thinking, if an alien tried to attack her while she was armed with a stick like this, she would have no trouble crushing its skull. They reach the settlement. It is smouldering cinder and ruin. Gol frets about fission products and acute radiation, so Orin lingers at a distance and studies what remains. A cat moves among the most distant rubble, hunting for mice. A tattered banner stirs in the breeze. She sees nothing more, so she ignores Gol's warning and goes in for a closer look. She finds bodies. Adults mostly. Some children. There are little houses for big animals, but there are no big animals among the dead. How did this happen? She asks, overcome by grief for these charred strangers. Aliens? I doubt it. The Fallen don't often use nuclear weapons. It ruins the land. My guess is that a warlord raided this place for its livestock and then set off a bomb. Why? Gol gives a little shrug, bobbing in place. Why not? No one was here to stop them. Oren clenches her mace a little tighter. She feels nauseous. Can you tell when it happened? He runs the computations. Not precisely. Less than 36 hours ago, I suppose. I should have walked faster, she mutters, and then bends over to be sick. You can't do that here, Gull interrupts anxiously. Stop, Oren. Stop. You have radiation poisoning. If you're sick here, you'll die here. And then I'll have to resurrect you here, and you'll be sick and die again and again. You have to move. Come. I told you not to walk around here. Warhammer. Oren graduates from wooden mace to stolen scorch cannon, from bare flesh to salvaged plate. The fallen do not interest her, but they are well provisioned. She hunts them to better hunt warlords, and makes many enemies of many older, wilier risen than she. The Pilgrim Guard find her pinned down in a box canyon, fighting alone and out of ammunition against a gang of 6 mercenaries. She is a graceless fighter with an unflappably grim resolve, so when they sweep in to help her, she does not immediately recognize them as the cavalry. She sees them coming, considers the odds, and then raises her empty scorch cannon to wield as a maul. 17-1. She'll try her luck. They laugh about it later over weak tea and hard tack. When the guard invites her to join them, they present her with a warhammer. It is as tall as she is. Along its grip, they've engraved the words, "I am the end of all things," in tidy block print. She meets a young woman whose skin looks like hers. "Where did you come from?" Oren asks, staring too hard, standing a little too close. It is impossible not to. Every other blue-skinned person she has ever seen has either been dead or a distant figure hurrying for a gleaming ship. The young woman cringes away from her. The Sinaloan ruins? Are there other people there like you? No. Hearing her question, one of her friends pulls her aside to point up at the sky. "Your people are up there," he says. "They live among the asteroids." "Why aren't they here?" she asks. But he has no answer. The everyday rhythm of the Pilgrim Guard suits her for decades. Eradicate warlords and alien invaders, protect mortal civilians, guide homeless refugees to safety. Their numbers wax and wane over time, but they are forever the watchers in the dark, the living shield that shelters, the ladder which humanity will climb toward rebirth. Inspiring campfire speeches are an endless fact of life, and they buoy her until she begins to recognize the leitmotifs of self-sacrificing heroism. Oren loves her leaders and friends. She loves her little ramshackle community. But she never wished to become soldier or symbol. Whenever they gather in the evening for dinner, she feels claustrophobic anxiety press around her. She is shackled to the wilds by all these people that she loves, and she has no words to explain her own restlessness. Alone, on night watch, she tells Gull that she feels monstrous. Why doesn't she love this? Why doesn't she want to stay? Question after question. There are stories of a massive settlement in the far south. Rumours call it the last safe city, a place of peace and prosperity, guarded by indestructible old Russian warriors who fight alongside 20-foot-tall wolves. Whatever those are. The Pilgrim Guard has heard of many so-called safe cities. They come and go, but mostly they go. Still, they reroute their caravan. The land down south is good, arable, temperate, and with too many indigenous parasites for the fallen to wish it as a customary home. Even if there is no safe city there, it is a better place to guide civilians than the ravaged deserts and plains of the north. Oren hopes the rumours are true, but it is a selfish hope. If the city is real, and people are safe there, then maybe she can rest. City is a misnomer. It has been a misnomer since this place's inception. It is a chaotic sprawl of tents and shabby lean-tos. There is not a single permanent structure among them. The streets are nothing more than muddy pathways that smell of waste and smoke. But the people. Neither Orin nor Gol have seen so many people in all their lives. Filthy children scream with laughter as they play tag around salvage tanks. A civilian militia stands vigil over cassava farmers. Armoured Risen bicker over where they should mark the city's borders and how best to defend them. The Traveller looms overhead as Orin wanders through it all, wide-eyed and exhilarated. The Pilgrim Guard prepares to move out, provisioned to make an 18-month expedition through the far north. Orin stays behind. No one questions her decision, though they do grieve it. Each one of them cuts a notch into the grip of their warhammer until it reads, I am the end of all things. There are Awoken here in this safe city. They are uncommon, though exos are even rarer. Most have ghosts, as she does. A few do not, and it's these people that Orin is most fascinated by. She dogs them with relentless patience, asking question after question. Where did you come from? Why have you come here? Where are the rest of us? Where did you get that gun? What are those bullets made out of? Why doesn't everyone have those bullets? Do people ever move to avoid you? Do you hear voices when you are alone? Are your dreams ever like omens? If I was one of you, why didn't anyone ever come looking for me? Queenslaw. Namki-sen is the first person to take her seriously. If we're gonna talk a while, we might as well sit down, he says, gesturing to a nearby stack of ammunition crates. He is a pilot from the reef, and he has been sent to recover downed surveillance drones he calls crows. His Hildian sustained damage during a dogfight with a fallen skiff, and now an important pump is leaking. He cannot find the source of the leak, nor does he have the supplies to repair it. The rest of the Awoken are at home, in the reef. The gun is a standard-issue Tiger Spite AR. It uses telescoped rounds made of a proprietary plasteel spin metal blend. There are engineers hard at work on manufacturing techniques that will allow for widespread distribution of the weapon to Risen and civilian populations on Earth. People do avoid him. Earthborn and Risen Awoken almost never speak to him. He is surprised that she bothered. He does hear voices. He does have prophetic dreams. He describes it all in detail, and she is shocked by how familiar it sounds. It's like listening to a recording of herself. At her final question, he hesitates. He runs a grimy hand through his hair and looks up at the stars. They have been talking a long time. If we're going to talk some more, he says at last, Might as well have a drink. Namki is not particularly tall, nor particularly handsome. Taken in isolation, parts of him are beautiful. His nose, his hands, the lines of his throat, the coruscating light that passes over his skin fascinates her. She watches to see if its patterns match her own. They do not. Most of all, Oren is struck by his ability to listen with empathy. He is quiet more often than not. Long silences don't frighten him. And when he speaks, he does it deftly, without condescension. It takes 8 weeks to repair the leaking pump. In that time, Oren convinces Namki to break Queenslaw and smuggle her and Gol beyond the Vestian outpost. She is determined to understand why she revolted against her own people. They are scarcely a half-day's burn toward Interamnia before they are intercepted by galiots painted in the Queen's colours. Oof, Sieur Ardo says when she sees Oren for the first time. Mara's gonna hate this. She crosses the detainment cell to get a better look at Gol. Figured this might happen eventually, but I'd always hoped. She pulls at the nape of her neck, then gives a little half shrug. Well, what can you do? Turning, she looks at Namki. You know you broke the law, right? He nods. She claps him on the shoulder and smiles. My man. 2 paladins deliver her to Mara's self. Gol is not permitted in the court, nor is Namki. I knew you, Oren says before Mara can speak. It is uncourtly etiquette, she supposes, but they are alone, and she is too bold to fear offence. What do you remember? Oren gives a slight shake of her head. Moments pass. Mara, too, is comfortable with silence. Behind her mask of composed indifference, her eyes are sharp with curiosity. Why did I leave? Oren asks. You wished to be my emissary. And you banished me for it? She squints. That doesn't seem like something you do. Mara smiles faintly. No. They have several more conversations. The revelations are absolute in their terror. Oren has never felt such a profound sense of schism. Not when learning that most mortals would sooner swallow cyanide pills and come face to face with Arisen, nor that the Elixni were once abandoned by the Traveller, nor that almost all warlords are light-bearers. But the Queen's law is, of course, the Queen's law. It must be upheld. But the spirit of the law often differs from its letter. Namki accepts a sentence of 5 years indentured servitude to the Crown for smuggling Oren into Reef Holdings. They let him pick his detail and negotiate his salary. Oren's case is not so simple. She is not who she was, so after vigorous philosophical debate, it is decreed that she cannot be held accountable for her past oaths. But she engaged in witting trespass, aided and abetted by a learned civilian, and for that she must sacrifice a boon, an unnamed future debt of the Crown's choosing. Oren accepts the sentence gladly and returns to Earth to mend her wounds. She needs to think. She needs to talk. Ecdysis. Debt. Part 1. It seems everyone knows the Pilgrim Guard now. Their numbers have quintupled and only continue to grow. The grateful civilians of the last safe city style them Guardians, and they wear the title well. Oren is glad to see her friends doing so well. She does not rejoin them. During his sentence, Namchi maintains daily contact with Orin via vidcom and holoprojection. When he is released, she begs him to come get her. She wants to understand what humanity was trying to achieve before it stooped to setting off nuclear warheads in order to steal a few cows. They scour the inner planets in his Hildian. Parts of it break down, they work odd jobs. They are deliriously happy. Centuries pass. Ecdysis, Debt, Part 2. On the day that Sior Ido dies, she receives a call from Mara Sov. "I would ask for my boon," the Queen says with shaking voice. It is the first time she dares to trust a Guardian. It will not be the last. The Queen paces as Orin leans on her warhammer. "I need to know who killed her," Mara says. To know, or to see them killed. Mara's grief and anger blaze across her face. She looks out at the reef as she struggles to master herself. Orin imagines Namchi dead, and clenches her warhammer a little tighter. At last, Mara says, "First, to know." She gives Orin the strange coin that the search party found on Sior's body. "I'm not sure it was a murder." The search sends her deep into a sub-lunar cavern, where she finds no enemies, but instead clouds of steam, and a half-man with grasping tentacles where his face should be. "Forgive them," he rasps as she crushes his windpipe in her fist. "Who?" she snarls, tightening her grip. His face writhes with growing urgency. Reminding herself that she came here for answers first and vengeance second, she pushes him away. He staggers, steadies, reaches into his robes to draw something out. "Orin!" Gull warns, but she's already seen it. She hefts her warhammer and strikes him hard in the chest. It's like hitting a ball off a tee. There is no resistance. He caroms off a dewy boulder with a sickening crunch. That is his spine. He will never stand straight again. And as he hits the ground, a tarnished silver jar slips from his fingers. The sound echoes as it bounces away into the dark. Orin uses a hunting knife and brute strength to puncture the jar's dented lid. She turns it over and pours a thin stream of pale grey powder into her gloved palm. "Dust returns. It ever returns." The man chuckles wheezily. She looks up, and he is gone. Ecdysis, Synesthesia, Part 1. Orin begins to experience waking hallucinations. Immaterial strangers speak to her in unrecognizable languages. When she reaches for Namchi, she feels as if she is falling into him, being pulled through him, sieved into smaller and smaller scarves of some atom self that he breathes into the blood of his bones. When she continues her hunt for the Queen, she feels a crushing fist around her windpipe. There is something she must say, but she has no words to say it. There is somewhere she must go. Someone she must be. It is not horrifying, though she thinks it should be. Instead, it is unspeakably lonely. It grows steadily worse, until it is not possible to tell the difference between day and dream. She tries to describe her number-colour synesthesia to Gol, to Namchi, to Mara. She sees green and thinks 9. She reads purple and tastes 9. They all tell her to stop, to rest, to be still. There have been other breakthroughs, other messages. The 9 are known. She cannot. She hunts for the man with the writhing face. She hunts for herself. On the day that Namchi dies, no one can reach her or goal, though they do try. She does not find out for months. Ecdysis, Synesthesia, Part 2. On the day she meets Wu Ming, she is on Bamberger. She has just left a Jensim lab. She has just read a transcript of Namchi's last words. Her hands are shaking. She feels nauseous. She feels she can see herself in third person, tottering to a safe place to sit and cry. Wu Ming is a bonfire in the darkness, and she crawls toward his warmth.
I'm sorry. I really miss him.
Yeah, me too.
How did you say you knew each other again?
Oh, Namchi and me were buddies. Met in a little dive on Ceres. Used to play cards. He talked about you a lot. Said the Queen trusts you to talk to the 9 for her. That true?
Yeah, sort of. Doesn't seem important anymore.
Yeah. Well, you ever need a shoulder to cry on, I'm here for you.
Wu Ming is ravenous for her stories of the 9. He asks whether she's met them, whether they can give a man power, whether they know a way out of this solar system. Orin cannot answer any of these questions, but she cannot keep her own stories down. She is sick with them. They come out in a compulsive, bilious stream, and when she is emptied, she talks of herself, of her grief, of her restlessness, how she feels the most alive in the empty spaces between blinks, how she feels she is a snake perpetually sloughing away its skin, except this last molt is all wrong, and she is caught in the ghost throat of her old self. Wu Ming leaves his questions by the wayside, as he is drawn inexorably into the gravity well of her desperate honesty. Her confessions lower his defenses. He talks of himself, of his fear, of his loneliness, how he feels he is one fingernail away from plummeting into an abyss, how he feels vicious resentment every time he is brought back from the dead. He never asked for the gift of the light. They make excuse after excuse to meet again. Every conversation is coloured by excavated truths. Every day, they feel they will reach some bedrock that will break them into pieces. It is as frightening as it is intoxicating. Lies. 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 He is not Wu Ming. He is a man named Eli. A man named Dredgen Hope, a man named the Drifter. He is not vulnerable. He is a paranoid con man. He is a dead-hearted murderer. He is a cowardly liar. He is not her friend. He is waiting to make his move. He has always been waiting to make his move. She is stupid. She is so stupid to have fallen for his lies. She cannot mend this.
I'm leaving. I'm going to go find them.
There is nothing out there for you, Orin.
Please don't pretend you care. This is a courtesy dredging.
I don't use that name. Not anymore.
Your friend Callum says otherwise.
Hand to my heart, I'm not lying.
You can't even hear yourself.
Orin, please!
I'm going Wu-Ming. This friendship, whatever you want to call it, it's over. Try not to get shot.
You want to go back to 1,000 years of the Traveler's Dogma, kid? Give up your freedom? Fine. You do you.
She leaves, and so too does the light. The severance is absolute in its terror. She has not felt such a profound sense of schism. It can be mended. Orin is not your name. Ecdysis, Scales. On the day she leaves to find the Nine, the Techians name her Orin the Lost. She raids a storeroom in the Vestian outpost, stuffing into her knapsack digital schematics for a Phaeton backscatter scanner, a jade coin, several bundles of dried queensfoil, and nothing more. She goes beyond the heliopause. It is a long walk. A sudden death. She sheds herself and emerges anew in the glimmering scales of her old lives. An immigrant, a translator, an emissary, a hammer of judgment. They expect to claim her will, but she clenches it a little tighter. Her gifts can end wars.